Welcome to Books and More Audio, where stories meet reflection, and every book becomes a journey of understanding. In this video, we explore What Happened to You by Dr. Bruce D. Perry and Oprah Winfrey, a powerful exploration of how childhood experiences shape who we become. This book isn't just about trauma, it's about healing, empathy, and the strength of the human spirit. Through science and storytelling, it helps us see that every behavior has a story behind it. Join us as we uncover lessons of compassion, connection, and hope, because healing begins with understanding. Introduction. What happened to you? From the very beginning of my life, I learned that love and pain could live in the same house. My grandmother, the woman who raised me, believed that discipline was love. Her voice, her anger, and even her silence taught me lessons that shaped my view of the world. I learned to be quiet, to anticipate moods, to read the air before anyone spoke. On the outside, I was the obedient child, but inside, I carried fear, the kind that stays even after the noise stops. For years, I believed that what happened to me was unique. I thought I was broken in some way, that my past had made me weak. But as I began to talk to others, I realized my story was not unusual. Many people, maybe most of us, carry invisible scars from childhood. They come from neglect, from rejection, from being told we weren't enough. These experiences don't just fade with time, they live within us, shaping how we love, how we trust, how we see ourselves. When I met Dr. Bruce Perry, I began to see that trauma isn't only emotional, it's biological. The brain of a child learns from its environment. If a child grows up surrounded by love, safety, and care, their brain learns calm and trust. But if they grow up surrounded by fear, chaos, or violence, their brain learns to survive, not to feel safe. The child becomes an adult whose body still remembers danger, even when the danger is long gone. Dr. Perry helped me understand that the real question isn't what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. That simple shift changes everything. When we ask what's wrong, we judge, but when we ask what happened, we begin to understand. We open the door to compassion for others and for ourselves. This book grew out of our conversations, our shared belief that healing begins with understanding. We wanted to give people language for their pain, to help them see that their reactions, fears, and emotions all make sense in the context of their experiences. So many of us live our lives blaming ourselves for things that started long before we had any control. But the truth is, our past explains us. It does not define us. What happened to you may have hurt you deeply. It may have changed the way you see love, trust, or the world, but it did not take away your worth. Healing doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means facing it with kindness, learning from it, and finding your way back to wholeness. This is not just a book about trauma. It's a book about hope, the hope that comes when we understand how resilient the human spirit truly is. Because once we start to ask the right question, what happened to you, we begin to see that even in the darkest pain, there is a path toward light, compassion, and healing. Chapter 1. Understanding the World. We come into this world as blank slates, open, curious, and full of trust. As infants, we don't question love, we expect it. We don't fear the world, we reach out to it. But from the moment we are born, every sound, touch, and facial expression begins to teach our brain what the world truly is. Is it safe? Is it kind? Or is it dangerous and unpredictable? Very early on, our nervous system begins to form its answer. A baby held gently, soothed when crying, and spoken to softly will grow up believing that people are good and the world can be trusted. But a child who is met with anger, neglect, or violence learns something very different, that life is unsafe, that love hurts, that the best way to survive is to stay small, stay quiet, and never expect too much. Those lessons don't fade as we grow. They become the foundation on which the adult self is built. When I was a child, I learned to read the moods of the adults around me long before I understood words. I could feel when anger was coming, even from the shift of a chair or the tightening of a jaw. My body learned to prepare. Muscles tensed, heartbeat quickened, breathing slowed. That was how I survived. What I didn't know then was that my brain was wiring itself to live in a world of threat, even when no threat existed. Dr. Bruce Perry explains that this is how trauma reshapes the brain. When a child lives in constant stress, the parts of the brain responsible for survival, fear, alertness, defense, grow stronger, while the parts that handle reasoning, empathy, and reflection grow weaker. The brain adapts, not to what should be, but to what is. It becomes an organ designed for survival, not peace. That's why so many adults who faced early trauma find themselves anxious, reactive, or easily overwhelmed. Their bodies are still living by the rules of a dangerous past. But the brain, as Dr. Perry reminds us, is also wonderfully capable of healing. Just as it was shaped by fear, it can be reshaped by love. Safety, consistency, rhythm, and compassion, these are the ingredients that allow the nervous system to relax and rebuild trust. Every warm interaction, every gentle word, every act of kindness begins to rewrite those old pathways. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It happens one safe moment at a time. Understanding the world, then, begins with understanding our own wiring. We are not broken, we are patterned. Our reactions, the anger, the withdrawal, the overthinking, all make sense when seen through the lens of what our brains had to do to protect us. When we realize this, we can stop blaming ourselves for the ways we've learned to survive and start learning new ways to live. Dr. Perry calls this the essence of compassion-based science, seeing behavior not as good or bad, but as communication. The child who acts out is not being defiant. They are expressing fear. The adult who avoids connection is not cold. They are protecting themselves. When we shift from judgment to understanding, we create space for healing to begin. The truth is, our earliest experiences don't just teach us about the world, they become the world inside us. But the miracle of being human is that we can change that inner world. We can build new connections, find new rhythms, and learn to feel safe again. Understanding the world is really about returning home, to a place of balance, belonging, and peace that we might have lost but can always find again within ourselves. Chapter 2: Seeking Balance. Every human being lives within two worlds, the outer world that others can see, and the inner world that few ever truly understand. That inner world is where our memories, fears, and emotions live. It is also where our brain constantly works to find balance between calm and chaos, rest and alertness, safety and danger. When that balance is disrupted, our entire sense of self begins to shift. Dr. Bruce Perry explains that the brain is not a single unit working in harmony. It is a layered system developed over thousands of years of evolution. The lower parts of the brain handle survival, breathing, heartbeat, reactions to threat. The higher parts are responsible for reasoning, reflection, and empathy. When we feel safe, these parts communicate smoothly, allowing us to think clearly and connect with others. But when we are under stress or in danger, the survival brain takes control. It doesn't ask for permission, it simply reacts. As children, we rely on adults to help us regulate that balance. A parent's gentle tone, a comforting touch, or a predictable routine teaches the child's brain that it can return to calm after stress. Over time, the child learns to self-regulate, to manage fear and frustration on their own. But if a child grows up in a home filled with yelling, neglect, or violence, that system never develops properly. Their brain remains on high alert, always waiting for the next explosion, the next abandonment. I remember times when I didn't understand why I was so easily triggered. A small comment, a raised voice, or even silence could make me feel like I was in danger again. Dr. Perry helped me see that my reactions weren't signs of weakness, they were echoes of a nervous system trained by experience. My body was still trying to protect me even when the threat no longer existed. This realization was both painful and freeing. Painful because it forced me to face my past, freeing because it showed me that I could change. The process of healing, Perry says, begins with rhythm, the natural patterns that soothe the human brain. Breathing, walking, dancing, listening to music, even rocking gently, all of these restore balance to a dysregulated nervous system. Rhythm is the oldest form of therapy. It reminds the body of what safety feels like, even before the mind can fully understand it. Another essential ingredient in balance is connection. The brain learns to calm itself through relationships. We regulate each other. That's why love, empathy, and presence are more powerful than any medication. A friend who listens, a partner who stays, a community that holds space for our pain, these are what teach the brain that it's safe to relax, to trust, to be. Healing doesn't happen in isolation, it happens in connection. But finding balance also means listening to our own rhythms, to recognize when we are pushing too hard, when we are ignoring our own needs. Many of us learned as children to suppress emotions, to keep going no matter what. That survival pattern may have helped us once, but as adults, it can destroy us. True balance means giving ourselves permission to rest, to feel, and to be imperfect. Dr. Perry often says that the opposite of dysregulation is not calm, it is connection. When we are connected, our brain finds its natural rhythm again. We breathe easier, think clearer, and feel more whole. Seeking balance is not about escaping pain, but about learning to hold it with gentleness. It is about allowing both our strength and our vulnerability to exist together. Because in the end, healing isn't about never being triggered again, it's about knowing how to find our way back to peace. The world may remain unpredictable, but inside us, there can be a place of safety, a steady rhythm that says, I am here, I am safe, I can begin again. Chapter 3: How We Are Loved. From the moment we take our first breath, love becomes the language through which we learn about the world. But love is not just an emotion. It is an experience that literally shapes the brain. How we are loved, or how we are not loved, defines the way we see ourselves and how we connect with others. Every touch, every smile, every moment of being seen and comforted sends a signal to the developing mind. You matter. You are safe. You belong. Dr. Bruce Perry explains that the brain of a child is like soft clay, always learning, always adapting. When a baby is held, comforted, and responded to, their brain forms pathways of trust and calm. The heartbeat slows, the body relaxes, and the child learns that the world is predictable. Over time, this sense of safety becomes part of who they are. But when love is inconsistent, harsh, or absent, the brain learns something else. That connection is dangerous, that love brings pain, and that it's safer to withdraw. Those early lessons stay with us, silently guiding every relationship we form as adults. I used to wonder why so many people, including myself, struggled with love even when we desperately wanted it. Why we ran away from the very closeness we craved. Dr. Perry helped me see that this is not because we are unlovable. It is because our nervous systems have learned to equate love with fear. For a child who grew up walking on eggshells, love and danger became intertwined. And even as adults, our bodies remember that pattern. When a partner raises their voice, when someone turns away too quickly, our brains don't think, they react. The survival circuits light up. The body tightens, the heart races, and we may lash out or shut down without knowing why. These are not choices, they are memories of love stored in the body. Dr. Perry often says that the body keeps score long before the mind can explain it. Our reactions are not failures, they are reflections of what love once meant to us. But here lies the hope. Just as love shapes us, new love can reshape us. The brain remains plastic throughout life. Every moment of genuine connection, every safe relationship becomes an opportunity to rewrite those old scripts. When someone stays instead of leaving, when they listen without judgment, when they offer kindness instead of control, the nervous system begins to learn a new truth. Love does not always hurt. Healing through love, Perry says, is not a grand moment of transformation, but a slow, steady accumulation of small, safe experiences. It is the teacher who believes in a child, the friend who doesn't give up, the partner who holds your hand even when you push them away. These moments are like gentle waves smoothing the sharp edges left by the past. They teach the body what peace feels like, what it means to be loved without fear. But to receive that healing, we must first understand our own patterns, the ways we protect ourselves from love. Some of us chase affection, others hide from it. Some control, others disappear. Yet all these behaviors come from the same place, a longing to feel safe. When we can see that, compassion replaces shame. We stop blaming ourselves for the ways we've survived and start giving ourselves permission to be human. How we are loved shapes not just our childhood, but our entire life. And yet, no matter how broken our beginnings, love can always begin again. We can learn to give what we never received and to accept what once frightened us. Because love, real, gentle, consistent love, is not just what heals the heart. It is what rewires the brain, transforming fear into trust and isolation into connection. In learning how we are loved, we rediscover what it means to be whole. Chapter 4. The Spectrum of Trauma. Trauma is not a single event. It is a spectrum, a wide range of experiences that leave lasting marks on the body, the mind, and the soul. Many people hear the word trauma and think of war, abuse, or tragedy. But Dr. Bruce Perry reminds us that trauma can also be subtle and silent. The absence of love, the loss of safety, the quiet neglect that teaches a child they are alone in the world. Whether loud or invisible, trauma changes how we see ourselves and how our brains learn to survive. Every experience of fear or pain sends powerful signals through the nervous system. When those experiences are brief and met with comfort, the body returns to balance. But when fear is repeated, when no one comes to soothe or protect, the brain learns that the world is unsafe. It stays in a constant state of alert. Even after the danger is gone, the body continues to prepare for threats. Muscles tight, heart racing, mind always scanning for what might go wrong next. This is what Perry calls the trauma state, living in survival mode long after the crisis has passed. I have seen this in myself and in others, people who seem calm on the outside but are always ready to fight, flee, or freeze at the smallest trigger. We call them sensitive, anxious, or moody, but what we're really seeing is a nervous system that has been taught to survive, not to rest. The tragedy is that society often judges these reactions instead of understanding them. We punish behavior that is actually communication, the body's way of saying, "I don't feel safe." Dr. Perry explains that trauma changes the very architecture of the brain. The lower parts, the ones that control instinct, become overactive, while the higher parts, those responsible for empathy, logic, and reflection, become underdeveloped. That's why people with deep trauma often struggle with focus, relationships, or emotional control. It's not a lack of willpower, it's biology. The brain adapted perfectly to an unsafe environment. It just doesn't know the danger is over. But there is another side to this story. Just as trauma can be contagious, so can healing. Safe relationships, rhythmic experiences, and moments of kindness begin to reset the brain's rhythm.
Every time we are seen, held, or understood, our nervous system learns a new pattern. Over time, those moments of safety accumulate and help us climb out of the trauma state. Perry shares that healing is not about erasing what happened, it's about integrating it. When we suppress pain, it controls us from the shadows. When we face it with compassion, we begin to reclaim our power. Many survivors, he notes, develop incredible empathy and insight. Not because trauma is a gift, but because surviving it requires courage and awareness. That awareness, when nurtured, can become wisdom. Understanding the spectrum of trauma means recognizing that every person carries a story, even those who seem fine. Some wounds are visible, others are buried deep in silence. What matters is not comparing pain, but acknowledging it. Healing begins when we stop asking, "Is my trauma bad enough?" and start saying, "My pain matters too." In the end, Perry reminds us that the human brain is resilient beyond measure. Even the most wounded mind can learn to trust again, given enough time, care, and connection. The path from trauma to healing is not a straight line. It's a rhythm, a gentle back and forth between safety and struggle. But with every compassionate moment, we move closer to balance. Because trauma may shape who we are, but it does not have to decide who we become.
Chapter 5. Connecting the Dots. Healing, Dr. Bruce Perry says, begins when we start to connect the dots, when we finally see how our past experiences shape our present behavior. For many of us, the biggest challenge is not what happened to us, but how those early patterns still live inside us today. We grow up, move forward, build lives, even find success, yet the body and mind continue to replay the same old rhythms of fear, control, or withdrawal. To heal, we must learn to recognize those patterns, not with judgment, but with curiosity and compassion. Every action we take, every emotion we feel, has a history. A person who avoids conflict may have grown up in a home where anger meant danger. Someone who craves constant approval may once have been a child who had to earn love to survive. When we start to see these links, the world begins to make sense. Our bad habits, overreactions, and emotional triggers are not flaws, they are adaptations. The problem isn't that we are broken, it's that we have been misunderstood, even by ourselves. I remember realizing that so many of my instincts, the need to control situations, the discomfort with silence, the constant push to prove my worth, were not just parts of my personality. They were echoes of how I learned to survive. As Dr. Perry explained, the brain doesn't distinguish between then and now. It simply reacts to patterns. When something in the present resembles a memory of danger, our body responds as if the past were happening all over again. Understanding that changed everything. It helped me shift from self-blame to self-awareness. Dr. Perry calls this process mapping your life story. It's not about reliving trauma, but about tracing how experiences have shaped your reactions. Once we can see the full picture, where the pain began, how it evolved, and what it taught us, we gain the power to respond differently. The past no longer has to control the present. We can learn new patterns, new ways of feeling safe, new ways of connecting. But connecting the dots is not easy. It requires patience and honesty. Sometimes the truth about our past can feel too heavy to face. Many of us learn to survive by pretending that everything was fine, by burying pain deep enough to forget it. Yet that buried pain still speaks, through anxiety, depression, anger, or exhaustion. The body remembers even when the mind cannot. Healing means letting those memories slowly, safely, and with support. Relationships play a crucial role in this process. When someone listens without judgment, when they help us name what we couldn't before, our nervous system begins to feel safe enough to heal. Each act of empathy reconnects broken circuits in the brain. It's as if the body finally receives the message, "You are safe now. You don't have to fight anymore." Dr. Perry emphasizes that connecting the dots is not about finding blame. It's about understanding.
Our parents, too, were shaped by their own histories. Many of them did the best they could with what they knew. Seeing this doesn't erase the pain, but it helps transform anger into perspective and perspective into freedom. When we begin to understand the patterns of our lives, we reclaim our story. We are no longer defined by what happened to us, but by how we choose to grow from it. Connecting the dots allows us to see the beauty beneath the scars, the strength that was forged through struggle, the empathy that grew from suffering, the wisdom that pain has carved into our hearts. In the end, this chapter reminds us that healing isn't about forgetting the past, it's about integrating it. When we connect the dots, we discover that our pain and resilience are part of the same picture. And once we can see the whole story clearly, we finally begin to feel whole ourselves.
Chapter 6. From Coping to Healing. For much of our lives, we learn how to cope. We push through, we endure, we survive. But coping is not the same as healing. Dr. Bruce Perry explains that coping is what keeps us alive in the moment, while healing is what allows us to truly live again. Many people who appear strong, composed, or successful are in fact still operating from a place of survival, managing their pain rather than resolving it. The journey from coping to healing begins when we stop asking, "How do I get over this?" and start asking, "What does my pain want to teach me?" Coping is instinctive. When the body senses threat, the brain triggers ancient survival systems: fight, flight, or freeze. These responses are life-saving in danger, but when repeated too often, they become our default state. Some people fight through life, always on guard, always ready to defend. Others flee, avoiding emotions, people, or situations that feel risky. Some freeze, stuck in numbness, unable to move forward. None of these are signs of weakness. They are the body's way of protecting itself. But as Dr. Perry says, the strategies that kept you safe as a child can imprison you as an adult. Healing, by contrast, asks us to face what we once ran from. It invites us to re-enter the places of pain, not to relive them, but to reframe them. The first step is safety. A person cannot heal in an environment that feels unsafe, even emotionally. The brain must first believe that the threat is gone before it can lower its defenses. This is why trust, consistency, and presence are more powerful than any therapy technique. You cannot think your way out of trauma. You must feel your way through it in the company of someone who helps your nervous system remember what calm feels like. Dr. Perry teaches that healing follows rhythm, the same rhythm that first shaped us as infants: rocking, breathing, heartbeat, song. The human brain is rhythmic by design. When trauma disrupts that rhythm, healing comes through restoring it. Walking, dancing, humming, even listening to steady music can bring the brain back into balance. Before words, before insight, comes regulation, the ability to calm the body so that the mind can begin to process truth. In my own journey, I realized how often I had mistaken resilience for healing. I could keep moving, working, giving, but deep down I was still running from the silence inside me. It wasn't until I allowed myself to stop, to sit with the grief, the anger, the confusion. Something shifted. Healing doesn't happen in the noise of productivity. It happens in the quiet moments when we dare to feel. Dr. Perry reminds us that the path from coping to healing is not linear. We may swing between strength and sorrow, between clarity and chaos. That is normal. The nervous system heals the same way it was injured, gradually, through repetition and safety. Each moment of calm, each honest conversation, each act of self-compassion is like a gentle correction, retraining the brain to expect safety rather than danger. One of the most powerful lessons in this chapter is that healing is relational. We are hurt in relationships, and we heal in relationships. Isolation may feel safe, but it prevents the brain from learning new patterns of trust. True recovery happens when we allow others to see us,
when we risk connection again. Every time someone meets our pain with kindness instead of judgment, our brain rewrites the old story. Love can stay. People can be safe. Moving from coping to healing requires courage. The courage to feel, to trust, to let go of the armor that once protected us. But it also brings freedom. Because healing doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means finally being able to live beyond it. In that freedom, we find not just survival, but peace, a calm that doesn't come from avoiding pain, but from knowing that we are strong enough to face it and still remain whole.
Chapter 7. The Wisdom of Trauma. Trauma is not just a wound, it is also a teacher. It reshapes us, yes, but it can also awaken us. In this chapter, Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey explore the idea that wisdom often grows from pain, and that the scars we carry can become the very source of our strength and compassion. Healing does not mean erasing the past. It means transforming what once broke us into something that gives meaning and light. Dr. Perry explains that every trauma leaves a biological trace. Even when we seem healed, the nervous system still remembers. A person who has lived through chaos may always startle more easily or sense danger where there is none. The body doesn't forget, but that doesn't mean we are doomed to stay broken. In fact, awareness of these scars can become the foundation of resilience. When we understand how trauma has shaped us, we gain the power to work with it instead of against it. I've seen how pain can turn into purpose. Many people who have lived through hardship develop extraordinary empathy. They know what suffering feels like, and that knowledge gives them the ability to connect with others on a deeper level. Dr. Perry says this is the alchemy of trauma, when something destructive is transformed into compassion. The very same sensitivity that once made us vulnerable becomes our greatest strength. But this transformation does not happen automatically. It begins when we stop running from pain and start listening to it. Trauma tries to teach us about our limits, our needs, and our humanity. Yet most of us are taught to suppress it, to be strong, to move on. But as Perry explains, you cannot heal what you refuse to feel. True healing requires turning toward the discomfort, holding it gently, and allowing it to tell its story. That process is painful, but it is also freeing. Oprah reflects that many people she's met, survivors of abuse, loss, or injustice, have become incredible healers and leaders. They have learned to use their pain not as a prison, but as a compass. They understand that suffering does not make us less, it deepens us. The wisdom of trauma is this: once you have walked through the dark, you recognize the light in a way others cannot. You become someone who can guide others out of their own shadows. Dr. Perry reminds us that post-traumatic growth is not about romanticizing pain. It's about recognizing the human brain's ability to adapt. Just as trauma rewires the nervous system for survival, love, safety, and connection can rewire it for peace. Every positive experience, a friend who listens, a community that supports, a simple act of kindness, sends new signals to the brain, strengthening pathways of trust and hope. Over time, the balance shifts. The story of trauma becomes one of survival and meaning. One of the most profound truths in this chapter is that healing is not about becoming who we were before the trauma. It's about becoming someone new, someone wiser. Pain changes us, but it can also reveal who we truly are beneath the fear. When we learn to carry our pain with awareness instead of shame, we discover an inner power that cannot be taken away. The wisdom of trauma, then, is not in the suffering itself, but in what it awakens within us: empathy, understanding, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again. Trauma reminds us that life is fragile, yet also resilient, that the human spirit, even when fractured, always finds a way to mend. And as Dr. Perry says, when we heal ourselves, we don't just heal the past, we heal the world around us. In embracing the wisdom of our pain, we move from being victims of what happened to us to authors of what comes next. That is the true gift of trauma. Not the hurt, but the insight it leaves behind. Chapter 8. Our Brains, Our Biases, Our Systems. In this chapter, Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey turn their attention outward, from individual trauma to collective trauma, from personal wounds to the systems that shape us all. They explore how the human brain, with all its brilliance, is also wired for bias, and how those unconscious patterns influence not just our personal relationships, but entire societies. The way we see each other and the way our systems are built often reflects generations of fear, misunderstanding, and unhealed pain. Dr. Perry explains that the human brain evolved to recognize patterns and categorize information quickly. This ability once helped our ancestors survive. We learned to distinguish friend from foe in an instant. But in the modern world, that same mechanism can become the root of prejudice. Our brains make split-second judgments based on what feels familiar or safe, judgments shaped by early experiences, culture, and environment. Bias, then, is not just a moral failing, it's a neurological habit. Oprah reflects on how these unconscious biases show up in daily life. They're in the assumptions we make about people who look or speak differently, in the opportunities we offer, in the stories we choose to believe. From childhood, we absorb messages from parents, teachers, media that shape our emotional reactions to difference. A child who grows up hearing fear or disdain in response to certain groups learns that difference is danger. That lesson, once imprinted, can last a lifetime unless we consciously unlearn it. Dr. Perry emphasizes that awareness is the first step. When we recognize that our perceptions are not absolute truths but conditioned responses, we can begin to interrupt the cycle. He explains that the brain's bias circuitry is built through repetition. Every experience, every story, every interaction strengthens certain neural pathways. So, the only way to change bias is through new experiences, through real, human connection that challenges our old assumptions. The brain learns safety through contact, not avoidance. This is why exposure and empathy are so powerful. When we spend time with people whose backgrounds differ from ours, when we listen to their stories, share meals, work side by side, our nervous system begins to relax. The unfamiliar becomes familiar. Fear gives way to curiosity. In that space, understanding grows. As Perry says, you can't hate up close. Genuine connection dismantles prejudice in a way that facts or arguments never can. But bias is not only personal, it's systemic. Our schools, workplaces, and institutions were built on the same human brains that carry these biases. They reflect our collective conditioning. Policies and structures that disadvantage certain groups are not just historical accidents. They are the echoes of trauma carried across generations. Oppression, exclusion, and inequality are forms of collective dysregulation. Societies stuck in survival mode, repeating old patterns of fear and control. Healing these systems, Perry explains, requires the same ingredients as healing an individual: safety, connection, and rhythm. Communities need spaces to come together, to share truth without shame, to rebuild trust. Change happens when people feel seen and valued, not blamed. It requires empathy, not hostility. Just as a child cannot heal in isolation, neither can a culture. Oprah and Perry agree that we all have a role in this healing. Each time we challenge a stereotype, each time we choose to listen instead of judge, we are participating in a collective rewiring of humanity. The process is slow, but it is real. The same brain that once learned to fear difference can also learn to celebrate it. The chapter closes with a simple truth: our systems are only as healthy as the people who create them. If we want a compassionate world, we must start with compassionate minds. When we understand how our brains shape our biases and how our biases shape our world, we begin to take responsibility for change. Healing, in the end, is not only personal, it is social. And every act of understanding, every bridge we build, is a step toward that healing.
Chapter 9. The Hungry Brain. Our Need for Connection in the Modern World. Human beings were never meant to live alone.
From the beginning of time, survival depended on connection, on being part of a tribe, a family, a circle of care. In this chapter, Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey explore the deep biological truth that our brains are wired for belonging. Connection is not just emotional, it is physiological. Yet in today's fast-paced, hyper-connected world, we are more isolated than ever. The result, Perry explains, is a collective hunger, a starvation of the soul and the nervous system that no amount of technology can satisfy. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived in small, close-knit groups. We hunted, cooked, worked, and rested together. The rhythm of life was shared. Every voice, every face, every heartbeat was part of a larger pattern that told us, you belong, you are safe. Our brains evolved in that environment, but the modern world has broken that rhythm. We now live in crowded cities but empty homes. We scroll endlessly through social media feeds filled with faces, yet rarely feel seen. Perry calls this the paradox of connection, surrounded by people but deeply alone. The brain interprets isolation as danger. When we feel disconnected, the body activates stress responses meant to keep us alert. Higher heart rate, shallow breathing, increased cortisol. These biological alarms were designed for short bursts of threat, but many of us live with them constantly. We are chronically on, searching for safety in likes, messages, or attention. Yet none of it satisfies the deeper need for real human presence, eye contact, touch, shared laughter. Oprah reflects on how modern life rewards disconnection. We glorify independence and self-sufficiency, but forget that no one truly heals or thrives alone. She recalls conversations with guests who had everything, wealth, fame, success, yet felt profoundly lonely. Their stories reveal that achievement cannot replace attachment. Dr. Perry adds that loneliness doesn't just make us sad, it makes us sick. Studies show that lack of social connection increases the risk of heart disease, depression, and even premature death. The brain, deprived of belonging, begins to shut down emotionally. Children feel this hunger most intensely. In homes where parents are distracted, overwhelmed, or emotionally distant, children grow up with invisible wounds. They may be well-fed and well-educated, yet still starved for connection. Without nurturing relationships, their developing brains struggle to learn trust, empathy, and self-regulation. The same is true for adults. We all need what Perry calls relational nutrition. It's the nourishment that comes from being truly seen, heard, and valued by another human being. Healing this connection famine begins with slowing down. Perry reminds us that the brain finds safety through rhythm. Shared meals, walks, songs, conversations. When we engage in these small rituals, our bodies synchronize, heart rates align, breathing steadies, and the nervous system calms. This is why therapy, friendship, and community feel so healing. They restore the rhythm that modern life has disrupted. But the solution isn't only personal, it's also societal. Our institutions, schools, workplaces, even neighborhoods often prioritize efficiency over empathy. Perry urges a shift from productivity-centered to people-centered living. Communities that value connection, where neighbors talk, teachers listen, and leaders care, create the biological foundation for collective well-being. Healing doesn't come from isolation, it comes from interaction. As the chapter closes, Oprah reflects on the simple truth that connection is both our greatest need and our greatest gift. When we look into another's eyes and truly see them, we are not just offering comfort, we are regulating their brain and ours. Every act of kindness, every shared moment becomes a small but powerful correction to the loneliness of modern life. Dr. Perry concludes that the hungry brain can be fed only through love, real, embodied, present love. We don't need more followers, we need more friends. We don't need more noise, we need more presence. Because connection is not optional, it is survival. And when we reconnect, not just through words, through genuine human warmth, we begin to heal the deepest wound of all,
the loss of belonging in a world that has forgotten how to be together.
Chapter 10. What We Need Now. In the final chapter, Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey bring the conversation full circle, from understanding trauma to reimagining healing, from asking what happened to you to answering the deeper question, what do we need now? The world is filled with noise, division, and pain, but beneath it all lies a shared human longing, the need to be seen, understood, and loved. Perry and Oprah remind us that the path forward, both individually and collectively, begins not with judgment or fear, but with compassion. Dr. Perry explains that humanity is at a crossroads. Our technology has advanced faster than our capacity for empathy. We live in an age of constant stimulation, endless news cycles, digital alerts, and social pressures. Yet we are emotionally malnourished. The brain, wired for face-to-face connection and rhythmic, predictable contact, is now overwhelmed by fragmentation and speed. We are overstimulated but undernourished, informed but not connected. What we need now is not more information, but regulation. Moments of calm, presence, and authentic human connection that restore balance to our overwhelmed minds. Healing, Perry insists, starts small. It begins in the micro moments, the parent who slows down to truly listen to their child, the friend who sits quietly beside another in grief, the teacher who recognizes pain behind a student's anger. Each moment of genuine connection becomes a thread that repairs the fabric of humanity. The systems that govern our world, education, healthcare, justice, must learn to value these human rhythms, not just results. Because no policy or program can replace what love and understanding create in the human brain. Oprah reflects on how this truth applies to everyday life. She speaks about the importance of presence, of showing up with our full attention. In a world that tells us to multitask and move faster, true healing asks us to slow down, to notice, to listen. She recalls her conversations with countless guests who shared their deepest pain on her show, and how the most powerful moments came not from advice, but from empathy, from simply saying, "I see you, I hear you, you matter." That, she says, is what every soul is longing for. Dr. Perry connects this to neuroscience. The feeling of being seen and understood literally changes the brain. It reduces stress hormones, strengthens the circuits of trust, and promotes healing. Safety, rhythm, and connection are the universal medicine for trauma. But we must remember that healing is relational. No one heals in isolation. We are designed to regulate each other. Our calm soothes others, and their calm returns to us. In this sense, every act of kindness is not only emotional, but biological. It helps balance the nervous system of the world. What we need now, Perry continues, is to rebuild community. The loneliness epidemic is not just emotional, it is a public health crisis. We need to create spaces in homes, schools, and neighborhoods where people can belong without judgment. Healing is not a luxury. It is a necessity for survival. When societies ignore the wounds of their people, those wounds echo as violence, addiction, and despair. But when we choose compassion, when we lead with understanding, we begin to transform not just individuals, but entire systems. Oprah closes with a reflection on hope. She believes that the human spirit, though fragile, is endlessly resilient. Every person has the power to be a healer, not through perfection or expertise, but through presence and love. Each time we choose empathy over anger, patience over judgment, we shift the world a little closer to balance. The message of this chapter, and of the entire book, is simple but profound. Healing happens in connection. What we need now is not to fix people, but to see them. Not to ask, "What's wrong with you?" but "What happened to you, and how can I walk beside you as you heal?" Because when we do that, we heal not only others, but also ourselves. In the end, Perry and Oprah remind us that the most powerful force on earth is not trauma, but love.
The love that listens, the love that stays, the love that chooses to understand. That is what we need now, and what the world has always needed.